Before the success stories, the progress, there was you. You who made a choice to grow, to inspire, to overcome your own challenges. At NASM, we're in service of your limitless potential, because when you keep growing, we all get stronger, and we'll never stop making your journey our mission. Join the fitness leader. Become a fitness leader. Become a certified personal trainer.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the Master Instructor Roundtable. I'm Marty Miller, here with co-host and dear friend Wendy Batts. Wendy, how you doing today?
I'm great, Marty. How are you?
Good. I've got an exciting announcement here. We got a special guest, a colleague in the industry that, Wendy, I know that you know Scott, and I've worked with him in the past. So we have a very special guest this week talking about vibration training, Scott Hopson.
Yes, I'm really excited. Let's bring him on, Marty.
Yes. So Scott, I'm going to give a little bit about your background and then turn it over to you to tell us, kind of a bit more about yourself. So we know you're the co-founder of Pivotal and PTA Global. You're a coach, you're an educator, you're a consultant, but so much more. So why don't you give us a little bit about your background, please?
Yeah, it's been about 27 year journey now. Started in the UK, then from London to Chicago. Now I'm on the West Coast. But the common thread has always been a passion for coaching. And that's evolved into educating, that's evolved into consulting with many of the leaders around the world in health and human performance. But at the end of the day, my happy place, my joy is when I'm in a room of like-minded, like-hearted people that, want to create environments of transformation. Mm-hmm. So that could be one-on-one, group, entire teams and organizations, which we do at pro and Olympic levels. Or my real passion is coaching high school rugby. I mean, you want to see me enjoy. It's on a muddy pitch on the south side of Chicago with a bunch of 14 to 18-year-olds hitting the life out of each other. That's my happy place. So that's it. That's what I do. And I think I'll continue to do it until someone says stop.
I love it. Well, Scott, it doesn't sound like that is going to happen anytime soon. But how do you go from this is what you love to do and coaching to vibration training? So how did you kind of get involved with that?
It's actually one of the most interesting kind of no pun intended, pivots in my career, because I had left London. I'd gone to Chicago to build and operate a really high-end health club. It was downtown Chicago, 2000. And 2 years into it, a couple of Dutch genius lunatics show up with these 4 whole body vibration platforms. And they say, we've heard about what you're doing here and you need to try this. Literally from Amsterdam, flew over with these products. And at the time, I was also coaching Division I men's senior rugby. And they put these 4 giant platforms in the middle of my beautiful gym. No one knew what they were, how they worked, or what they did. And so the next 6 weeks, I had to literally explore what was possible. But the underpinning thing was the principles. I was like, well, mechanical vibration, we're just made up of nothing but, trillions of cells that respond to incoming sensory input, of which most of them are mechanical when it comes to movement. I was like, life is vibration, movement is mechanical. There's got to be something. Literally, that's how it started. And all I remembered was over a 6-week period, because I was documenting and I was measuring, is whether it was my active aging 65-year-old bone mineral pain fall prevention, my rugby guys who wanted not only performance, but getting out of pain recovery for the next match or practice, or my 13, 14-year-old athletes. I got the same 3 responses. I really feel good when I get off. Like, number 1 was, I just feel great when I get off. Number 2 was, I'm in less pain. And number 3 was, the next thing they did, mobility, strength, power, whatever, felt better, more effective, more efficient. They're like, that now feels easier, whether it's lifting load or running faster. Feel good, less pain, and I'm moving, performing better. And so I picked up a phone and called these Dutch guys and said, I don't know what you've given me, but I need to come to Amsterdam. That visit changed my life, because they laid down on a table 36 research papers that you couldn't find on the internet, from like crazy geniuses in Iceland and Finland who had been studying this for decades, but no one had published their work. And all my answers were right there. I kid you not. And I said, well, I don't know how people don't know about this, but I need to be part of telling people about this. And that started me becoming a global educator for PowerPlate back in 2004. Was because I had no idea what these rocket ships were on my gym. Everyone loved them, felt better, moved better. And as it turns out, there was evidence. We just weren't privy to it. And so that's how it started. And still to this day, with my private clients, my teams, entire organizations, there's not a solution that I create where vibration isn't baked in. It's just a fundamental part of the recipe. It's in the DNA, just like mobility, stability, strength, power, recovery, nutrition. It's like, I can't conceive of not using it, you know?
Scott, I love that. And you and I have been colleagues since around 2006, because I was an educator for PowerPlate for a long time. And, you know, to me, it's the safest application of force, and we'll get to that. But it's just, as you say it, like, no one's going to argue me that you shouldn't do it if you have access to it. But for those of the people that are joining you today on our Master Instructor Roundtable, can we just start with truly, I think people have seen power plates or understand vibration, but can you truly just kind of go through some basic, description of the concepts of vibration training?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think that's one of the biggest barriers to entry. Is 20 years ago, it wasn't around much. Now it's kind of everywhere, but probably no one knows what it does or how to use it. So fear shuts us down. Like, I don't know what that is. I don't really want to ask anybody for help. So I'll just do what I've always done. I think when it comes to the technology science, which precedes the movement science, like, what does this thing do? It's really simple. It's not just vibration. It's not electrical. It's not mechanical. It's not electrical. It's not magnetic. It's mechanical. But what you got to picture is when you're on it, any movement you could conceive of that you're doing on it, let's just take a squat, a push, whatever it may be, that platform's actually going up and down. It's not just the shake and bake. Far from it. It would do nothing. It leaves your center of mass and comes back 25 to 50 times a second. Now, two critical things happen as a result. Number one, every time it leaves your base of support, could be hands, your elbows, your feet, depending on your position. That's like stepping off the curb or jumping or walking down the stairs. There's a moment where the proprioceptors in your body say, oh, wow, the ground just went missing. So I need to do something about that. Turn on. So it activates tissues by moving your center of mass over your base of support. Now, the real magic is when it comes back, because it's being accelerated. Really, mechanical vibration is acceleration training. It's moving rapidly, 25 to 50 times a second. Imagine every time the ground comes back, you have ground reaction force. Okay, so now we've got these little micro hits of ground reaction force, micro hits of instability, micro hits of ground reaction force, 25 to 50 times a second. So when you do your 10 squats, it's not 10 squats. It's hundreds of moments of instability, hundreds of moments of ground reaction force, critical, safe mechanical loading without the compressive impact forces. And then the real kicker is my favorite tool, power plate, front and back, side to side, up and down, vertical, sagittal, frontal. Well, that's kind of life. So what it's really doing is it's stimulating subconscious muscle action through instability, ground reaction force in 3 dimensions. That's what it does. Now, the harder part is, well, then what happens as a result? You know, the movement science, what happens to the nervous system, muscular, skeletal, endocrine, metabolic. That's a long conversation, but there's a plethora of evidence now. And more importantly, an abundance of programming from that research. It says, if you want bone, do it like this. You want strength, do it like this. You want to attenuate inflammation, that's exciting, do it like this. You want to upgrade BDNF, miracle growth for the brain, do it like this. I mean, what we know about vibration today in a diversity of populations is staggering. I feel like it should be front and center of health and wellness solutions. But the basic premise is micro instability, micro ground reaction in multiple dimensions. But that's regular strength training. That's how simple I think it is today, is that. All the rest of it is like, let academics and research people argue about words we don't even understand. But what you're basically telling me after 20 years is the ground went missing, came back and hit me. Yeah, that sounds like plyometrics, running, jumping. So I can use that.
Keep it simple.
Yes.
I really think it is, and it makes sense, because that would stimulate bone and everything else we see go up. But if you just thought it shaped like the vibrating belts of the 50s, that's why people look at it and laugh. It's like, well, it came from space programs in the 1970s. So when people say, oh, it's not rocket science, actually it kind of is. They kind of put it up there in the 1970s to prevent muscular and bone atrophy. And what I read with these two Dutch guys was papers that showed when the athletes went up in space, they were losing 33% of bone mineral in 21 days. 21 days. In 3 weeks, you're not just osteoporotic, like that's death at the door. And so they had to find a way of loading the tissues in a zero gravity environment. So what this plate really does is it adds accelerational force, gravitational load to the body. That's why it worked in space. Because in space, I can do a 5,000 pound deadlift on one leg. It doesn't weigh anything. I need gravity to make resistance become weight. And so this thing adds weight to the body. It's kind of fascinating. You know, I still today like, how did someone come up with that? Were they just over a cup of coffee? Were they in the shower? Like who said, I think I've just solved the riddle.
Right? I love it. I love it. Well, today we're talking the science behind vibration training on the Master Instructor Roundtable with myself, Wendy Batts, co-host Marty Miller. We have a very special guest. Scott Hopson is joining us, and he is the co-founder of PTA Global and Pivotal. And Scott, we are live, by the way. So if you guys have questions, please be sure to put them in the chat box, and we will get those questions answered, or Scott will, hopefully. But Scott, it kind of brings me back to, with NASM, we're all about research. We want to say that when we say something, we want to show that there was evidence behind why we do what we do and the order of doing why we are doing certain things. So in the research that you found, when those studies were on the table and you're looking at them, do you know approximately how far back vibration training has been researched?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the initial stuff was like the second half of the 20th century, right? So like 1970s through 1990s for sure. But again, we didn't have access to it. And I tried some of those platforms. It was like getting kicked by a donkey. They hadn't calibrated frequency and amplitude. Today, we know the right frequency, amplitude, and what we call G factors, which is like the influence of acceleration. They were like 5 times higher. You would get on and be like, all right, I've got DOMs after 30 seconds, So, but what we know now is from the early 2000s, starting around 2004, 2006, there was a plethora. And now it's just abundant. I mean, I have for sure over 160, 170 on my, like real papers on my computer right now. But back then in the early 2000s, you would have to wait another year for another couple. Then you'd have to wait another couple. Oh, someone's starting saying in multiple sclerosis, you'd have to wait 3 years. Because they'd have to submit it, then do it, then get IRB public. All right, I'm going to wait 3 years for that one new paper. Now, you can't keep up with who's doing it. You have to have, you have to go searching and you find stuff like, wow. So now it's abundant. Early 2000s, I would say 2004 to 2010 was the explosion. And when you find the stuff that for me was the game changer, and not just in bone, but just to give you one example, Wendy, right? A paper in 2006, I want to say, could be 6, I think. Bogarts et al. Did a 1-year randomized crossover study in over 200 people. That's significant. And they were looking at, check this, bone mineral, functional strength. And this one was the one that just threw me for a curve, VO2 max. And they were just doing strength training protocols on the power plate, right? Over a 6-month period. We knew bone would go up. It went up. We knew strength would go up. It went up significantly. And not just static, but dynamic. In other words, it's transferable, carries over to life. But VO2 max went up. And I would travel the world screaming at people like, it kind of makes sense because we look at all the biological systems and then there's, 11 neural, renal, endocrine, all that, the stuff that we kind of never learn because it's taught in boring ways. And I put it into 3 movement systems. And I said, well, if I take the biological systems and put it into 3 movement systems, I'd have my software, the operating system, I'd have my hardware, the moving parts, and then I'd have my battery, which is our highways, the fluids of the body, right? And I was like, but if vibration training is doing this, more muscles, more often, firing like crazy, well, circulation is going to be through the roof. And actually, if we look at cardiorespiratory demand, all it does is respond to the working muscle. You can't think yourself into, VO2 max. You have to do something. So it would make sense that doing a strength training program where there's thousands of motor unit activations in minutes is an increase in mechanical demand. Well, if there's an increase in mechanical, there has to be an increase in metabolic, which means what's pumping that? What's the central system? Stroke volume, cardiac output. I'm like, well, if that goes up to feed those muscles that are doing more work, it would make sense in theory, VO2 would go up. But the fact that a study showed it, and in 65 to 80-year-old people, where bone mineral, sarcopenia, fall prevention, and decrease in VO2 max are huge issues. And today we're talking about how VO2 might be one of the top 3 longevity markers in life, along with mental resilience, grip strength, and inflammation. We now get back where we were 30 years ago. VO2 is kind of important. And 20 years ago, there was a study on power plate in that very population saying, I know we were looking at bone and strength, but as it turns out, the thing that might be the biggest predictor of whether you live longer with vitality also went up. Doing a cardio program? Well, doing movement. That's the red thread. And I just found that like so fascinating. And it took me away from these silos of here's mobility, stability, strength, cardio. There's movement. And how I load that movement to what purpose determines my physiological outcomes. And I could take a strength movement and make it metabolic. I could do speed work and increase your strength and your body composition changes. Yeah, but is that a speed exercise or is that just there for a performance movement? And it was that paper that kind of changed me. And that's just one that really stands out from Bogarts et al. And I've got dozens and dozens of them, but it's there. So the question becomes, why don't we have that awareness that it's there? And when I look at other modalities that I love and use, it could be suspension training, could be free weights, could be Pilates. Show me the research specific to that product. I don't see it. No, but what we do is we apply the principles. This is a movement tool using whatever it is with suspension, gravity, mass, momentum. Therefore, we apply the principles of strength conditioning to that. Of course. Here's a Pilates reformer, right? A cable system. So we apply the principles of strength training to it. Here's vibration. Why don't we apply the principles of strength training to it? Because we don't understand the principles of vibration. And if it was in every cert, in every academic degree right here, I think you would see the world using it in abundance because it just makes sense.
Now, this is great information, Scott. I'm going back to our 3-day education in Arizona. And I remember at the end of those 24 hours, how many exercises we did and the neurological fatigue I had, because we got into millions of muscular contractions, right?
Millions.
Yeah. So if you can explain, if anyone's ever seen the power plate or a platform, a lot of times you're stationary. I'm going to use air quotes, right? Because Scott did a great job talking about how the platform is diving out from underneath you temporarily and coming back. But can you talk about, I've had this concept where people are like, well, you're just standing there or holding. Can you talk about how many times that's happening per second, and plus that stretch reflex that's happening at a subconscious level that you could never consciously contract that muscle? Because even though I look like I'm in an isometric, if you saw what was going on, if you can kind of dig into that for a little bit, to me, when personal trainers get that concept, they're like, oh, now I understand.
Well, you've just opened Pandora's box, my friend. Congratulations. I'm looking at the time like, oh my gosh, I got to try and be concise on this one. 2 things. If you look at isometrics today, what we know about isometrics today, and not to go off on tangent, we got our overcoming versus our yielding. We got isodynamics. We got reactive isometrics. It's a lot more to it than we used to think. And the impact it has on bone, muscle, strength, power is incredible. So even if you were doing an isometric on vibration, given the benefits of isos, plus the benefits of vibration, and you put them together, that in itself is a win, a massive win. But to your great point, you're not technically isometric because the ground's moving, which means you're moving, but it's happening so rapidly, you don't see the change in position, joint angle, muscle length. It's happening. I mean, if you're standing on the ground and it moves, then you fall. You're not isometric. So it's quasi-isometric. The second thing is the stretch shortening cycle. What I love about it is it responds to the change in length, the muscle spindle, change in length. But the big one is the rate change of length. Well, vibration is beyond rapid, it's ballistic. If in 1 second there's 30, that means in 30 seconds, there's 900. That's ballistic. So you're actually now tapping into not just slow twitch, but explosive fast twitch, because it's an explosive stimulus. So you get an explosive response. but you're doing such a high volume of them, 900, that you need those endurance fibers to go with it. Is it slow or fast? Yes and yes. That's a paradox. So I think you're never truly isometric. And even if you were, that's a win anyway. But you can also move dynamically. In fact, I've helped PowerPlate create some pretty incredible curriculums now that shows you that continuum. Do I want to move local or global? ISO, variable angles to full dynamic in full dimensions, when and how. And the key here is that tension in your muscles are a vibrational magnet. Wherever the tension is, the vibration is going. So imagine you're in a bilateral squat and you go to your mid or end range. If you just shift your weight to one leg only, you're still got, you will feel that side working exponentially harder. Well, because there's tension. And so the vibration goes where the tension is. And that's what we call the tonic vibrational reflex. It seeks out tension in the system, which is why if you just stand up straight, you feel the vibration go all the way through you. It's not harmful. And you'll feel it in your head. You feel it everywhere. Boom. It's going through you because you're a passive system. And the minute you sit down, you won't feel it in your head. So here's the question. If you've got the same amount of force going vertically through you on the platform, why when you stand up do you feel it and when you sit down you don't? It's called soft tissue dampening. When you create tension by actively changing your positions, statically or dynamically, vibration follows the tension. So even dynamically moving on the plate now is as good as the old ISOs. But you got to know how to shift your positions to create tension to get the vibration where you want. And so I could take something like my active aging longevity population, 75 years of age, and they want bone, muscle, fall prevention. But more importantly, all of that is so that they can live vibrantly and play with the grandkids till the day that they can't. And I can just say, right, let's get you in a position you know, and you're stable in, get you into a range in that position where there's a lot of tension. And I can use your weight to shift. I can use arm drivers to shift. And all of a sudden, there's different tension in different tissues. I'm turning on stuff you don't even know about. You think you're squatting, but I'm turning on your abdominals just by changing the tension in your body. And so that's one of the most, I think, magical things about vibrations. When you understand that, and again, there's online education to teach you that system now, you can just make the complex look simple. And I don't know about you guys, but whether it's your everyday person, your competitive athlete, youth to adult, people don't care about foot function and abdominal. They're like, I don't care. Am I going to have less back pain when I do my laundry or not? And so they just want to know that you're doing the thing that gives them the outcome they asked for out there in life. And vibration lets me do that. You know, yes, we move on the ground. Of course we do. We use all the modalities, but it is my secret sauce. And it's not just for the people at risk. My rugby guys are beat up. My rugby girls are beat up. So what can I do twice a week for maybe 40 minutes? Because that's all I've got. Because they're not sleeping. They got homework. They got school in the morning, and they're still practicing rugby 4 or 5 days a week. I got 2 40-minute slots for your strength and conditioning. Maybe you can't handle more mechanical load right now because you're sore from the match 2 days ago, but your nervous system's ready. So let's get on there. You know, I think there's so many great applications to it.
I love it. I love it.
Did I even answer your question? I'm not.
Yes, you absolutely did. You crushed it.
Scott,
you got to roll me in. You got to roll me in.
I know how you think. I know how you think.
I love the fact, y'all. We are here with Scott Hopson today. He is joining us. We are talking on the Master Instructor Roundtable with Wendy Batts and Marty Miller. We are talking vibration, the science behind vibration training. And Scott, like, I love the fact that you also go on tangents because that's usually me. So thank you for that. And the information that you're providing. But I will say I am a huge fan, and I have always been since the first time I got on there and someone really showed me how hard the power plate was, because again, it's this machine. It just looks like it shakes and I'm trying to figure it out. But when somebody was literally showing me the specifics of, you can foam roll on this, you can stretch this, you can do different exercises on this, and you can do basically a full body workout on this piece of equipment, doing whatever it is that you need. The number one question I get often is, well, how do I know what hertz to put it on? Like where to start?
Yeah.
And I don't even know what a hertz is, you know, like they're asking me all these questions and I'm like, well, and then I don't want to get too sciencey, but how would you explain it to our listeners of how do you explain and answer that one question?
Yeah, it's a really good one because there is a lot of layers. You've got to keep it simple, right? So in everyday nomenclature, I would just say, listen, forget hertz and amplitudes. Think of them as your intensity dials. I can dial you up, I can dial you down. Frequency means how often is this thing going up and down, and therefore how often are my muscles firing. Amplitude is how far is it going up and down. How often, how far. Well, if I turned it up on this one, that means that I'm going up and down more often. Well, that sounds like more work, correct? And if I'm going further each time, that sounds like even more work, correct? Put them together, it's a lot more work. So would you want to do your flexibility and mobility and stability on high intensity? No, correct. You don't do that on vibration, low frequency, low amplitude. Okay, I'm working on strength, right? But where would you start? Well, if I'm in an extensive phase of training, let's say movement quality, foundational strength, the first thing I build is volume. You don't build intensity in the first 4 weeks unless it's like your athlete or someone with a high training age. So if I've got my macro cycle, mesocycle, micro unit, my first block is like, hey, let's work on movement quality, foundational strength, maybe some work capacity. So volume. Okay. So I'm not really changing my intensity dials, frequency and amplitude. I'm adding more time under tension. I'm adding more sets. I'm decreasing work to rest ratio. It's exactly what you do on the ground. It's no different. Think of them as dialing up, dialing down. But if you said, I want to get into intensive now, I want to start developing like maximum strength and power. Well, now volume goes down, intensity goes up. Which one first? Frequency. When you go from 30 to 35 to 40, your workload goes crazy. Now you're not just doing 30 per second, you're doing 40 per second times 30 seconds. That's hundreds more in one set. The big one is amplitude. When you go from low to high, you double the work. That's not incremental. And the way I explain it is, hey, if you're on the start line and you got to get to the finish line and it's 40 yards away, and I say go, and you take off as hard as you can, as fast as you can. And then you stop and I time you. And let's say it took you 5. Oh, wow. How do I make that my screensaver? That's phenomenal. I like that. Let's say we time your 40-yard dash and you do 5 seconds. Well, we know how much work you've done. Distance by time gives me work. Now, let's say I said, right, now you've got the same 5 seconds, but you've got to go there and back. That's twice the work. When you go from low to high amplitude, you've gone twice the distance in the same time. So you're working twice as hard. It's that simple. Frequency, how often, amplitude, how far. If you're going to turn up one first, frequency. Second, amplitude. It can get really complex, and the methodology can get really granular. What I do for bone versus max strength versus speed strength versus strength speed, different. Endurance, right? What kind of endurance? Strength endurance, power endurance. We can get really granular. But at a basic level, I want to prepare faster. Circulation, mobility, stability. Okay, you're going to be on the lowest settings. I'm not trying to fatigue you. I'm trying to excite you. I'm trying to get you ready for the rest of the session. So fatigue doesn't sound like a good idea. Now we get into the prepare better. Now you've got your hypertrophy, your strength, your power, whatever it is you're working on. Okay, the dials will go up. And then we get to recovery. How do I recover quicker? Well, with power play, that is your circulation, massage work, your tissue work. You turn that thing up. Now, if you want more of a fascial release versus a circulatory pump, slightly different conversation, but we can always tweak it to refine the response and adaptation. But that's the big 3 buckets. I'm going to prepare on the lowest frequency and amplitude. I'm going to perform kind of in the middle to high, depending on the goal. And I'm going to recover like up there, lay down, be passive, let that thing pump, let it like relax the tissues, like PNS, let's go, rest and digest. So that's the quickest 3 buckets I could give you. But again, there's a ton of methodology, whether it's on the PowerPlay courses, whether it's on the PowerPlay app, where you get into the granular stuff too.
Scott, that's amazing. Great information. One of the other things, this will be a simple one, I know. Well, at least I think it will be. What are the contraindications of using, or if there are any, for vibration?
Yeah, it used to be the most complicated one. Exactly the same contraindications to ground-based strength and conditioning work. If you are cleared to jump up and down, walk down the stairs, get on and off the toilet, carry the baby, in other words, strength training in real life, if you're cleared for that, you're good for strength training with vibration. If you're cleared for cardiorespiratory, or what I prefer to call energy system development work, because it's not just your cardiorespiratory, right? Blood, lymph, hormonal system, it's metabolic. If you're cleared for that, you're cleared for this. It's that simple. Because in my opinion, after all these years, it's not the product. It can't be the product, a free weight, a treadmill, Pilates reformer, vibration, suspension, they're products. That's the contraindication. The contraindication is your health and physiology to exercise. So if you have any kind of condition, dysfunction, dis-ease that makes exercise a contraindication, well, that's what you need to get clearance on, not on vibration. It's not electrical, it's not magnetic. And when you look at the diverse populations that it's been studied in now, right, from total joint replacements to spinal cord injury to neurodegenerative disease to obesity, diabetes, COPD, none of them have come back with any negative consequences. They've all had positive, safe, and effective outcomes. So, you know, you can always come up with really extreme examples, but I would simply still apply, well, would you be clear to run on a treadmill? I've got a detached retina, then that's going to be a no. So if you're not cleared to do ground-based cardio, why would you get on a power plate? Mm-hmm. I'm pregnant. Okay, but were you exercising before pregnancy? Have you used vibration before pregnancy? Yeah, carry on. I got hyperemesis. I've got all kinds of first trimester issues. Then don't do it. It's not the power plate. It's your physiology relative to exercise. That's the contraindication. I think as an industry, we got to get better at saying that. Mm-hmm. It's never the product. How can a dumbbell be safe and suspension not, or a reformer safe and vibration not? They're just environments that we train on. But if your physiology doesn't like the response to exercise, now we've got a problem. So that's how simple I think it should be now. You know, and people say, it was crazy to me. Just me personally, as a coach and educator like you guys, is, you know, people in their 75s and 80 years of age now, double hip replacement. I don't know if the audience watching this, if you've never videoed and watched a live, like what they do, they cut you open. They're not gentle about it. They snap you. I mean, it's brutal. Then they rip out all the old stuff that's been in your DNA for your whole life, throw that away. And then they throw in some titanium, ceramic, whatever it is. And then they stitch you up. And within 3 hours, they say, right, you've got to get out of bed and walk up those stairs. Because if you don't do it now, it's going to get really hard with the scar tissue and, you know, adhesions. So we need you walking now. So we can cut up an 85-year-old and tell them to go walking while they're still like got hematomas and they're bleeding internally. But we're like scared about exercise. I find it really fascinating that because we don't always have a proven answer to something, we just say, don't do it. But if you look at medicine, they can be pretty brutal in what they do. And then they send you home in 48 hours and say, just go carry on with life. Well, who's monitoring my mum's bleeding when she's carrying her groceries up 3 flights of stairs after a hip replacement? No one. And they don't notice a problem until she calls the doctor and says, ouch. Mm-hmm. So I kind of, you know, I've changed my opinion a little bit. Like, if you're cleared for this, go for it. But if you're not cleared for like that, walking downstairs and getting a massage, why would you massage on the power plate? It's the massage that's the problem, not vibration. So.
Well, I'm so glad you said that. First of all, scope of practice obviously is extremely important. That's why we always want to buddy up with the physical therapist, or, you know, for me, I had a cancer survivor who came up and the oncologist cleared us to do vibration things. And the outcome that she had, she just felt better even after day one. She felt more clear. She felt that she could move more freely. And we didn't do anything extreme, Scott. Like you know, if you look at what we've turned with our foam rollers, contraindications, rheumatoid arthritis, osteopenia, osteoporosis, that's different because you're applying pressure on a roller. This is completely different. And I think that's where sometimes the confusion lies because of all the percussion devices out there and the foam rollers that now vibrate and do all of that. This is completely separate. So if you guys have not had a chance to do the power plate, you need to. But Scott, let me ask you, because I know we're taking up so much time and I could listen to you talk about this all day. But if you were to leave behind like the main thing that you would want our listeners to walk away with, what would be your kind of final words to leave with us?
Oh, gosh, that's tough, right? Like, what would I say as a coach? What would I say as an educator? What would I say as, you know, ... a leader who's built and operated health clubs across the world? It would be a different answer. But I think when it comes to vibration, there's what we know There's what we don't know, and there's what we don't know. We don't know. Today, we know a lot. So the fact that you may not have heard of it, the world's best have all heard of it. From medicine to surgery to ACSM to the Surgeon General to NASA to NFL to World Cup to Olympics, best coaches, best therapists, I've heard of it and use it. Generally, that doesn't happen if there's not scientific validation behind it. Bear in mind that PowerPlate was also an MDD approved device, medically certified device. It was an IFI certified device, inclusive fitness initiative for people with different special needs, disabilities, etc. The idea that does it work has been answered unequivocally. It works. Is it safe? Yes. The question should be, then how does it work for me? Well, now you've got to do your homework, because it's not going to be in traditional certifications necessarily, or your traditional academic degrees. It's not going to be front and center on Instagram, but you won't have to dig far. And so, like everything, if you just invest a little bit of time, there's incredibly globally accredited education out there, online and live, that will answer it for you. So I think that's where it starts, is awareness. Like, why don't I know about that if the world's best do? And I often tell people, it's like the best kept secret. The world's best know it works, you know? So it's like this little secret, quote, biohack, as we would say today, been around for like decades, including rocket science. So it's here. If you don't know about it, know about it.
Now you should.
Yeah, if you didn't know, now you know, right?
Now you're going to rewind this and listen to it again and again and again.
Yes, and don't, and I say this respectfully, but we all do this. Listen to the top 10%, the best coaches, the best therapists, the best who are out there saying you got to know about this. Listen to the people who seem to know and have the history and understanding in the industry to have a voice. Everyone you speak to, yourselves included, to the world's best, we know it are. So, oh my God, I love it. I've been using it for ages. Why would we all be saying that 20 years later? If it, you know.
Scott, this was awesome. You know, it's a great refresh for me. I've been around PowerPlate forever. I actually have one. It's a big component to my home gym. And as I said earlier, it's the safest application of force I can find for so many of the reasons you talked about. And for those of you that, you know, were geeking out on the science that Scott talked about, go to powerplate.com, go check out the research. There's even more that you can dig into. Scott, if you can believe it, was giving us that 50,000 foot view into it. So they've done a lot of work to get this product, but the research that backs that product, just like the OPT model, is out there. And I highly encourage you all to go find it. So Scott, can't thank you enough. I have a feeling we're going to get a lot of questions, and I may be calling you soon saying, hey, we want to do part 2 at some point here in the future. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. That was like 2 seconds, right?
Right. Exactly. Good stuff. Yeah. Thanks, Scott. Wendy, I told you he wouldn't disappoint. He's a wealth of knowledge, so passionate guy, which I love, great educator. And I know that we're going to get a lot of great comments and feedback on today's podcast.
Yeah. Well, Marty, thanks for bringing Scott on. Scott, I know we already said this, but thank you for coming. Those of you guys that were listening to us, we want to say thank you for always being a part of Marty and I's Master Instructor Roundtable each and every week. And Marty, I can't wait to do it again next week. So guys, hopefully we will have you guys submit some information that Marty and I can talk about. If there's certain topics that you want us to do, if there's anything that interests you that we have not discussed, please send us an email. Marty, where's the best place to find you? What's your email address?
Simple. It's marty.miller@nasm.org, or there's my Instagram, dr.martymiller72.
Yes. And mine is wendy.batts@nasm.org, or you can find me on Instagram at wendy.batts13. So Marty, until next time, everyone that joined us.
For joining. See you next week.
We'll see you guys again next week. Take care.